It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting at my website, emailrevealer.com. If you like our show, be sure and check out our Patreon. Go to Opperman Report Patreon. There's a lot of exclusive content. We just put up the Durham Report up there in the free section at Patreon. There's a lot of free stuff up there, too, so it's a good idea to check it out and see what's going on. And, of course, our archives are free at Spreaker.com. You can go there. There's a chat room. You get an email notification whenever we put up new content. And I do put up repeats every night of the week. And also, too, there's a live show there Friday nights. I do solo, just where I go over the stuff of the week. And if you go there and check out Everett Stern, we had Everett Stern on there. You can check him out in our archives. We have him coming back. Now, you can find him at everettstern.com, on Twitter at Everett Stern, the number 1. He's written about a book about his experience as a whistleblower called Dark Money and Private Spies, the Everett Stern Story. He also has another book, The Official Michael Flynn Report to DOJ. And he just did a press conference last week, and we had him on like the day before, so we rushed the show out to the podcast. So we want to have him come back, had a press conference about his contact with Charles McGonigal, who's this disgraced FBI agent. But he named some more names at the press conference. We had him come back to tell us what's going on. Everett Stern, are you there?
Yes, I am. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
No, sure. I had a good time last time. I had a lot of good information. Now, people can also find Everett Stern at his company called Tactical Rabbit, where he does like intelligence work and opposition research type work. Is that correct? Is that what you do over there at Tactical Rabbit?
Yeah, we do different types of counterintelligence, trade secret theft. If you have your trade secret stolen or an employee steals your idea and then starts his own company, we get involved to resolve those types of problems.
Yeah, I did some work for The Hague, and a lot of that was copyright infringement. It drove me crazy. But what are you going to do? You got to make a buck where you can, right? You know what I mean? But before we get into all your this new information that came out at the press conference last week, before I left for D.C., remind the audience, who is Everett Stern?
Yeah, so I guess I'm a former U.S. Senate candidate. I ran for U.S. Senate in Pennsylvania, and I testified to the January 6th committee and worked with the FBI on numerous cases regarding national security. I guess I'm a businessman, a politician, and an author, and also a CEO. So I wear also a family man, and good husband, hopefully, and so I wear a number of different hats, I guess.
Gotcha. So we had you coming on because you had a press conference about Charles McGonigal, who's an FBI agent who is being charged with selling information. I guess it's to the Russians.
Yeah. So Charlie is being charged with helping Oleg Deripaska. So Oleg Deripaska is this Russian oligarch who is tied to organized crime. Is accused of killing a business associate. I mean, this guy's just a bad guy, and he's sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury Department. So OFAC, the Office of Foreign Assets and Control, sanctioned this individual where no U.S. business or person can do business with this guy. Our allies, I believe, have also sanctioned him. So Charlie McGonigal was being paid by Oleg Deripaska. They said back to 2018, and he was sanctioned. I mean, you can't you have to remember Charles McGonigal was the head of counterintelligence in New York Field Law. I mean, this guy was a very high up, powerful individual, and for him to be dealing with Oleg Deripaska is just, absolutely insane.
Now, when you see it in a lot of the right-wing media, they're trying to portray this arrest or these charges against McGonigal as, hey, look at this, the FBI, they claimed Russia collusion, and here they are, they're the ones actually colluding with the Russians. How would you describe this scenario?
Yeah, so, I mean, right. Some of these right-wing media outlets, they're trying to they're trying to politicize it when it's not a political issue. It's a national security issue. So it's nothing to do with look, there's a lot of good FBI agents out there. I think the majority of FBI agents are good people. They're trying their best. And look, you have a certain level of corruption in every organization out there. In this case, to have Charlie McGonigal, as so high up, being dealing with the Russians, that doesn't mean what these right-wing extremists are saying. They're just twisting the whole situation. But there is even today though, there are it even came out there are certain FBI agents that had their access security clearances revoked and due to the January 6th involvement. They were very pro-Trump and very, so there are these agents out there that they're influenced by this, right-wing extremism, to be honest with you, and they need to be, outed. And they are. I think the FBI internal investigations is doing a good job of that. I mean, look, they found Charlie McGonigal. They're finding these other people. I don't think the FBI is an organization. I think the Republicans are just trying to cover their butts on this, but they're just trying to twist it. But it's not so much of a political thing. It's national security. But yeah, I mean, the FBI in its overall is not assisting the Russians. That's certainly not the case. I don't believe that.
How would you describe your own Everett Stern, your political persuasions?
What was that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, how would Everett Stern describe his own personal political persuasions? I'm assuming you're a conservative and you ran as a Republican in this Senate race?
Yeah. So in the U.S. Senate race in Pennsylvania, I initially ran as a Republican, but, there was a blackmail and extortion plot by General Flynn
right.
To overturn the election and push for these audits. And I was approached to help with this effort, and I, played along and actually helped the FBI, and then later on testified to the January 6th committee about it. And General Flynn was subpoenaed 3 days after I testified. I'll be honest with you, I ended up breaking off from the Republican Party and then running as an independent. And then at the end of the race, right before the Fetterman debate with Oz, I dropped out because I was polling at around 5%, according to the Fox News polls and a couple other polls. And the race was so tight, and Fetterman was getting into trouble, so I endorsed Fetterman. And people were in shock because me coming from the Republican Party, even though I was an independent, they thought I would endorse Oz, but I didn't because I can't support a Flynn or Trump-backed candidate. I'm not pro-Trump in any way, shape, or form. I think the guy's a lunatic. So and Oz, has tons of connections with Flynn. So, but now my own political views. So I'll be honest with you, it took me, I think, to run as a Republican to realize I have more Democratic views than I do Republican views or conservative. It really opened my eyes, going to these political events, and some people just spewing this hatred for other groups or gays or even the abortion issue. It's just a lot of my initial views on things dramatically changed by the end of the race because I just started questioning my own value system and where I stood on things. And I was like, well, I don't hate these certain people, and I think gays and lesbians or the LGBT, that whole community. I think they should have rights and should be able to get married and do what they want. I mean, I believe in my own personal political view is, look, as long as you're not hurting anyone, doing it, live free, be happy. I don't, so I'm not this conservative that I initially went into the race to be, or the way I'm portrayed on Ballotpedia or anything like that. My views have dramatically changed, dramatically.
So before your contact with Flynn, were you a Trump supporter?
No.
No, never.
No.
Never.
So never. But I did play along for a while there, saying I was a Trump supporter. I even threw my campaign under the bus and gave a speech saying I was a Trump supporter and I was a Flynn supporter, because I was trying to get more involved with their organization and understanding. It was an intelligence operation to understand more about what Trump was doing with this overturning of the election. So it confused a lot of people, because they're like, well, what does this guy really stand for? What's his view? And but I had to sacrifice my own Senate race in order to find out the truth, and that can be shown. The New York Times did a story called "Michael Flynn is Still at War" by Robert Draper, and also the Guardian came out with a great story by Peter Stone. You can see online, and but in the end, though, I think my political views came very clear with my endorsement of Fetterman. I mean, if I didn't have more democratic views, or if I was a Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form, I certainly wouldn't be endorsing John Fetterman.
And just to remind the audience, your contact with Flynn was he was trying to enlist your assistance in digging up blackmail dirt on opponents.
Yeah, because especially elected officials, and that was the biggest issue. So the main target was Brian Fitzpatrick, but then there was also Senator Toomey, who's now no longer in office, but he was kind of a secondary target. A little bit more of an explanation to that, but anyways, Tactical Rabbit, my company, we have former CIA and FBI, agents, and we have tremendous intelligence capability. So, and also I was running for U.S. Senate, so I had access to certain individuals, and so actually, Flynn thought it would be an advantage to have me on his side, in order to help with the efforts in overturning the election. It was a very, very scary, dangerous thing. I'll never forget one of Flynn's operatives saying to me, "We will accomplish the mission by any means necessary, including the use of domestic terrorism." I mean, that was the exact words said to me, and that's what set me on my quest to kind of forget the U.S. Senate campaign for a time and focus solely on trying to penetrate, Trump's org and the Flynn organization to see really what was going on here, and while working with the FBI at the same time.
And Flynn even described to you the use of former intelligence operatives or agents of foreign and domestic.
Yeah, and that was a huge, obviously a huge red flag to me. One of the I had Flynn operatives explaining this to me, that they were recruiting domestic and former domestic and foreign intelligence officers. To help in the effort. It's just very, very concerning. It's illegal, and it's not just concerning; it's illegal.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you can't even accept foreign money in a domestic election. Just imagine you're utilizing foreign intelligence operatives in a U.S. election, and this was to find dirt on the electors and to get them to change their electoral college votes, right?
Right, and also, Brian Fitzpatrick is a very moderate Republican congressman in Pennsylvania, but also I was told to make the push into help in Michigan and other states. I was told there are operations being set up in Oklahoma, Nebraska, Virginia. This was Arizona. This is a nationwide campaign launched to overturn those 2020 election results, which was absolutely illegal, and I'm sure the Justice Department is looking into this heavily.
Now, did you have any discussions come up about the Hunter Biden laptop?
No, I've never. that's never come up or has ever been in my wheelhouse or anything.
Gotcha. Now, what about these other fellows that you hear about? Sidney Powell, Patrick Berge, Patrick Byrne. Any contact with them?
Yeah, I never had contact with them, but there are photographs that I found with Joe Flynn, General Flynn, Patrick Byrne, and then one of those operatives, Bellman Ruth, that told me that they would accomplish the mission by any means necessary, including use of domestic terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
There's a photograph with all of them together, which is very concerning. And look, to me, I mean, Sidney Powell, Giuliani, these individuals were mentioned to me in the course of the intelligence operation. So it was definitely this is a very serious intelligence operation that myself and my team conducted on behalf of the United States, and I took a lot of heat for it.
Have you had a chance to read the recent lawsuit, the complaint against Giuliani for sexual harassment, and they mentioned selling pardons and things like that?
I haven't read the complaint, but I've heard about what's going on with Giuliani. It's really a shame. He was a real pillar in. I remember after 9/11. I mean, he was such a he was viewed in the light of such a good mayor of New York and a good guy. I remember when he ran for president, and then all of a sudden he just went off the deep end. And it doesn't surprise me what's being said in the complaint. It doesn't surprise me at all. But he's just, it's very interesting to see a lot of these people who are, I think moderate Republicans, and then once they get involved with Trump, they just go off the deep end. And they start, we're talking operating from a place of no logic. And the behavior is just inappropriate. But Giuliani, look, to be frank, I think he's nuts. I mean, he's just off his wall.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Now, what about? I'm from New York, so I've known these people for a long, long time. Now, what about your testimony for the January 6th committee? Did you contact them? Did they contact you?
They contacted me. So I was contacted by a former congressman who was a committee member, and I remember the January 6th committee. They wanted me. I testified behind closed doors because they were very afraid for my safety. So I testified actually in a hotel room.
And what's the nature of the questions?
What happened with the Flynn situation, and it was just taken down in detail as to exactly what happened, including as the question was raised as to why the FBI was not moving faster on the matter, or there are certain questions I couldn't answer because I just didn't know, but I know that they took it very seriously. And I remember when I was there were investigators. They called it the Red Team, the Domestic Terror Team, that was helping with the January 6th committee. And yeah, I mean, I was told everything I said. Everything was typed up and recorded, and everything I said. I mean, it could be criminally used against me if I lied or anything like that. It was very serious. I mean, it was a pretty, incredible, serious event.
No, I hear you. I was involved in a couple of congressional investigations myself, and I sympathize, which is a very serious event. A couple of questions. Now, is your testimony publicly available?
No.
And then
I seriously doubt it ever will be.
And then when they brought in Flynn, he pretty much took the fifth for the whole hearing, right? For the whole questioning.
Yeah, and I remember, the exact moment when he did that, he wasn't suing me yet, but he ended up suing me for $250 million for defamation. But I countersued him for $250 as well, which is that lawsuit's not resolved. But I remember when he took the fifth, and look, it was a very clear question that they asked him. Do you believe in the peaceful transition of power? I believe it was the question, and he takes the fifth on that. I mean, how do you get the fifth? It's a simple. Of course, I believe in the peaceful transition of power. I don't understand. I don't understand why you would even take the fifth on that. It doesn't. Well, I do understand it because I understand his nature, and I understand the nature of the Flynn group, and that of what they're trying to do and destabilize the country. I mean, look, they even put out a book on I believe it was fourth generation warfare, on how to on how the average state citizen can help overthrow the United States government. I mean, this is very beyond concerning stuff, and the whole QAnon movement. All these people out there that are following him and giving him money. It's just he's building an army out there, and it's very concerning.
His brother is an active duty general who was in the chain of command on January 6th in the decision making of bringing in the National Guard to the Capitol. You know that, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And what's and from my understanding, I mean, he's being investigated. There's an investigation now that's looking into, did he withhold troops on purpose?
Yeah.
And I mean, in my opinion, I think he did. And I think the DOJ and the government's waiting for the right time to go after him as well. But to have him, as a general as commanding the Pacific Fleet, I think it's a huge problem.
We got a lot of problems, man. There's a lot of problems.
And that's why I want to get into government, because I want to try to fix some of these very obvious problems. Try to do the right thing. Believe me, I'm not perfect at imagination, but so you try to get into government and do the right thing. And for some reason, these people are not. A lot of people on the Trump side are not understanding that. Look, Biden is the president of the United States. He was voted in, and that's it. That's how this country works. You get voted in, and then you take the debate to the ballot box. You don't use violence or intimidation or anything like that. That's not the American way.
No, politics is played. It's a hard game. It's hardball. But still, all my life, I'm 60 years old. No one was bringing in Proud Boys, armed oath keepers to the Capitol to try to shut down the count of the Electoral College. Never in my lifetime, and hopefully never again. Do you know anything about? Was anything come up in your discussions with the January 6th investigators about Capitol Hill police? Trump went out of his way to say they're on our side. We had this fellow, the suicide of Liebengood, whose father was sergeant at arms, and then later went to work for Roger Stone and Paul Manafort and their lobbying company. Anything in your conversations with congressional investigators January 6th about the Capitol Police?
No. I mean, my conversations with January 6th committee members was geared. Well, it was really a one-way, directional. Me explaining the situation, and there was some conversation, but I can't disclose what was said. But no, it wasn't along those lines though that we discussed. Gotcha.
And then you mentioned earlier. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say, we never got into those types of conversations.
You'd mentioned earlier that for your safety, you were interviewed in a hotel room. Now, since right after it was announced you were coming on my show, I started getting bombarded. Well, I guess you can call them like trolls, online type trolls. There is a concerted effort to discredit you and to kind of marginalize you and harass you in a way, right? And what have you experienced as far as that goes?
Yeah, it's very extreme. I mean, there's a huge effort to discredit me, and to try to destroy business relationships, to try to harm. They post fake reviews about my company or about me. this is all Flynn's doing. And I know it's funny. One thing they always bring up, which I'll bring up as well, is they say, "Oh, Everett Stern impersonated a federal agent or something," and it is true. I was arrested, but I got a summons. I got a summary, charge for disorderly conduct. That the impersonation of a police officer was or federal agent was dismissed because it wasn't true. It's not something I did. But a summons. If I actually impersonated a federal agent, I wouldn't be getting a summary charge. Summary. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's not even a misdemeanor. It's a city ordinance. It's like a traffic ticket. Mm-hmm. So if I actually did something like that, which these Flynn people keep putting out there that I did, there's no way I've gotten a summons. I would have gone to jail, or I would have ended up in federal court, which is not what happened. It's a BS thing. But one reason why I'm bringing that up is because I had people, after I testified to the January 6th committee against Flynn, coming up to my apartment in my parking garage and harassing me and harassing my family and looking through my window. It was a whole thing where I to a point where I had to move. And these, this situation where I got arrested, it was simply me defending my family, where I had people trespassing on my property. And, I told them I was a federal candidate, not a federal agent. And these people who were on drugs, the police took their testimony the next day, they said that I said I was a federal agent. So, and again, of course, the DA dropped that because it wasn't true. It's not what I said. I said I was a federal candidate. Please stop coming up here and harassing me and my family. I mean, that's a fair statement, I think.
I can tell you just my own personal experience, and it's very common in the private investigation field for people to accuse you of impersonating an officer. And I was once there wasn't any official accusation, but they went to the attorney and they said that I said I was a sergeant in the police force. Which for anybody that knows me would be the last kind of thing I would say. But people hear, when they hear federal candidate, right away they hear a federal investigator or a federal agent. They just hear these things, because I've seen too many PIs be accused of it, so that I know these aren't the type of guys that go flashing phony badges and stuff. That people just hear these things. They hear. They hear investigator and they think cop,
Right, and what was crazy in my situation is I didn't have a badge or credentials, or I was dressed in gym shorts and a T-shirt. Like, I was just trying to defend my family. That was it. So, I didn't have credentials. It wasn't like the way, and this newspaper, reporter who reported on the story, is in this fringe local newspaper. He depicted it in a very wrong way, and he's going to end up getting sued. But he depicted it, and when the story first came out, it was former U.S. Senate candidate pleads guilty to impersonation of a police officer, which wasn't true. I didn't do that. I pled guilty to a summary charge for disorderly conduct. And again, if I actually did what I was accused of doing, there's no way in hell I would get a summary conviction. It's just not possible. It doesn't happen that way. So that's my, and this is the number one. They even contacted my book agent, to try to knock my book off the market for this instance. Everett Stern's impersonating that's the number one thing these Flynn people use, which is it's just not true. So anyone out there listening to this, when they start hearing things about me or taking it for face value, because right now I'm trying to make a difference. I'm going up against this David and Goliath right now, and I have a whole army of these trolls just, pumping out disinformation, which is what, Flynn is an expert at doing. In the Trump organization, they are experts at disinformation, and that's what they're doing to me. I mean, Roger Stone himself took out tons of op-eds against me. You can see them online, and Roger Stone even went up against me. So this is, and you have to ask yourself the question: well, to get this much attention from Flynn or in Roger Stone and the Trump org, I must have said something to hit a nerve. I'll tell you that right now. I mean, they must be very concerned if they're throwing all this ammo at me.
Yeah, that's true. You don't file a 250 million lawsuit against nobody. Everett Stern #1 at Twitter, everettstern.com. You can find them. The books we're talking, we haven't talked about this book at all, but we talked about it in the previous interview, Dark Money and Private Spies, the Everett Stern story. And you can also get a copy of the official Michael Flynn report to DOJ. Now, in that report, is it just him saying, I take the fifth? It's a short, small book. How much is in that book?
No, I mean, there's a good amount of evidence, in that. I had to block out certain aspects of DOJ and that were going to the DOJ that were sensitive. But you can get a pretty good, if you're an investigator, and if you can look at those. I post actual text messages. I post actual. If you look at this stuff, I mean, you'll be able to you'll be able to connect the dots and say, holy cow. This is what Everett was involved in, and this is what I was seeing, and what the American public, really needs to know. A lot of stuff I can't just explain, but I can put it out there, and hopefully, the right people are putting the dots together.
Yeah, so many people, like they say January 6th, and they say, oh, it was mostly peaceful. It was mostly a peaceful protest and a rally, but there was a lot of behind the scenes. Manipulations going on, just like Everett's telling us here, but also with the Capitol Police and all kinds of stuff going on that day. Very well organized, with some very powerful people.
Oh yeah, no, that was not far from a peaceful protest. But again, what's important is that Flynn and Trump's efforts didn't just stop at January 6th. They went beyond, way beyond. Into 2021 and my race in 2020. I mean, this went very far from January 6th. I mean, this was a concerted effort to overthrow the United States government. I mean, to me, I believe this is treason. What's happening? And that's why I broke away from the Republican Party. And I think that honestly. There are some good Republicans, out there, good people, and people who want to see the country do well. But I think overall, the party is being drowned and consumed and being fed disinformation, and that has converted this party into something that is unrecognizable. It's just unrecognizable. I certainly am not a part of it.
Right. And so, what do you think would happen if Trump were to get back in and had the power of the pardon? To pardon all these Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, all these thugs, and Flynn and all these characters, and bring back Giuliani. This time he would go for the end of the wall. He'd bring all these guys in. Do you think he would ever leave office?
I do not think he's going to end up. I think he's going to end up in jail. He can do what he wants, try to make as much smoke as he wants in the air or some ink in the water, but there's not going to be. Him getting back into office. It's not going to happen, no. It's a very dangerous situation that's happening right now. With corruption in government, with public corruption, and what's happening with Trump. It's just, it's just very dangerous. And this goes into the Charlie McGonigal issue. With him and Oleg Deripaska, how the Russians are infiltrating us. Look at the Solar Winds example.
Well, before we get to that, because I want to get into the whole thing with McGonigal and the other names that you didn't mention on the show last time that you did go into. But before we get into that, the Durham report. Have you had a chance to read the Durham report?
No.
Okay, me neither. Okay, I'm sorry you can tell me what's in it, but it doesn't sound like there's much there. Now, keep in mind that in this interview here, we haven't discussed at all. We did it off the air a bit, so keep in mind that. Charlie McGonigal, what was your experience with Charlie McGonigal? And you had a press conference back before on the last interview, and there were some other names you wanted to mention. So give us your experience, your contact with Charlie McGonigal. Who is Charlie McGonigal, and who are these other names, and Deripaska, and all that story with him?
Yeah, so again, Charlie McGonigal was the head of counterintelligence in the New York field office, and he was very, very powerful because he was one of the heads of counterintelligence at the FBI. So counterintelligence is spy hunting. So for him to be taking money from Oleg Deripaska to help him violate sanctions and to move money, that's a very big deal. And it's just like I remember Hansen back in the day, that
right.
spy for the Russians. It's kind of a similar type situation where right now the FBI and the intelligence community is trying to figure out, okay, how much damage did McGonigal cause here to the intelligence apparatus, and how many people are in danger now as a result, or our financial system. I mean, Charlie McGonigal was my POC, which means point of contact. So the national security intelligence that Tactical Rabbit my company would develop, and I would develop, we would pass on to Charlie McGonigal, and then I find out, years later, he's actually working for the Russians. So that means I'm livid and extremely pissed off because my national security intelligence could have been going to the Russians, which is a huge problem. And also, who knows what else was done to my FBI file? Charlie McGonigal was being accused of opening up an investigation against an American. Who knows what damage was done here? And also, we don't know what agents are still loyal to him, right? So it's a huge problem.
Now,
go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
Oh no! I was just going to say that. So, anyways, I gave the press conference because I had to alert the American public as to what was going on, with this case, because most people, obviously it was confidential that Charlie McGonigal was my POC, but I have information, evidence. I have documents that indicate with a very strong degree of confidence and buttresses the notion that his dealings with Oleg Deripaska, go back to 2015 and not 2018, which is a very big deal because that means that he was still very much in depth with the FBI, and I have documents of this, and also I have documents because that's what I talked about in the press conference that there's a very powerful businessman in the UK named Walter Serrano, who I named in the press conference, and Walter Serrano is very good friends with Benjamin Netanyahu, and I met him in London actually back in 2016, and someone who worked for Walter Serrano was another FBI agent who was arrested as well a couple of months ago, named Mark Rossini. Now, Mark Rossini was arrested for violating sanctions for Venezuela for a bank, and also he's a former FBI agent, and also for I believe bribing the governor of Puerto Rico or something of that nature. So this is very serious stuff here, right? And Mark Rossini, I know, is very good friends with Charlie McGonigal. And I was introduced to Charlie McGonigal through Mark Rossini. So this is a huge issue and problem that people need to be made aware of. And I gave the press conference, and the biggest thing was that Mark Rossini was working for this group called the USG Group, which is owned by Walter Serrano, and back in 2016, and I was approached to help Oleg Deripaska because Oleg Deripaska was a client of Mark Rossini and Walter Serrano's back in 2015, 2016. And again, Mark Rossini has been found to have a company in Albania with Charles McGonigal. So again, this is Oleg Deripaska comes into play with Mark Rossini and the McGonigal's world much sooner than 2018, and also obviously current. But I was tasked or paid by USG Group to provide intelligence to Oleg Deripaska on certain things. and what I did was, and I said this in the press conference, the real intelligence went to the Central Intelligence Agency. It did not go, and also went to the FBI, and you can understand where the problem lies there, because maybe Charles McGonigal passed that back to Oleg Deripaska, that I was giving up information on him to the United States government. So you can understand that circular loop where that's a huge problem. But McGonigal, Oleg Deripaska, I was able to give him some intelligence where I wouldn't defraud him, of course, or defraud the USG group, but at the same time, I'm not going to give him intelligence that can harm the United States of America. I was trying to gather intel and pass that on to the USG. So, it was Central Intelligence Agency was the main, was where that main final work deliverable went. But which is a huge, huge part of the story that people don't know about. And again, I have just tons. I mean, Oleg Deripaska, he lost the diamond. I mean, imagine it's like diamond, kind of like the Titanic, the heart of the ocean type diamond. I mean, I was tasked to hunt that thing down. I mean, there's a lot of information I have here about Oleg Deripaska and and the possible involvement of Charles McGonigal, and also Mark Rossini.
Okay, so, and this press conference, it can be found at everettstern.com. No, Everett Stern #1 on Twitter. Yes. People go to Everett Stern 1, my Twitter account. They can see the press conference on YouTube. They can also see it on my Twitter feed. And then I actually did attend the Charles McGonigal hearing in New York at the federal courthouse. I did go to that. And I went, and it was a really incredible experience because, I don't get into too much detail as to what went on there, but that was that was an experience I will never forget. Being in that federal courthouse in that situation, that was incredible. Okay, now, since your press conference, have you been contacted by anyone in law enforcement, the prosecutor who's prosecuting McGonigal, anyone?
That I cannot get into or comment on at this time.
Okay, are you concerned with any issues like being registered as a foreign agent to be working for Deripaska?
I'm sorry, what was that?
If you were working for Deripaska, do you need to be registered as a foreign agent, anything like that?
Well, if you're working for Deripaska before he was sanctioned, so when I was helping USG Group and providing information to the agency, it was the Central Intelligence Agency, against Oleg Deripaska. So it was a double agent play, right?
Yeah.
So but in that time period, though, Oleg Deripaska was not sanctioned. So I didn't have to register as do anything of that nature or do anything, but when Oleg Deripaska became sanctioned, or if Charlie McGonigal had dealings with Oleg Deripaska as an FBI agent, even before being sanctioned, that's a huge issue.
Yeah. And it goes to show you the tentacles that these oligarchs, even in our own country, all around the world, that they have, where they don't have to go right out and reach out to McGonigal. They can do business with his partners and his friends and gain that influence there that way.
I have, with a very high degree of confidence, a lot of people were paid off here, and Oleg Deripaska has made some significant inroads into our government apparatus, but I am also very confident that the FBI will, cut those tentacles and certainly uproot any type of root system that Oleg Deripaska or the Russians have placed inside our intelligence community or our law enforcement apparatus. So, I do still have full confidence in the United States government. Some people out there say, "Oh no, just give up on on the government. They're completely corrupt, and I don't believe that. I saw these DOJ prosecutors in that courtroom, and I can tell you right now, these guys mean effing business. I mean, they really do. I mean, these guys are very serious. They want to do good for the country, and I have faith in them.
Now, McGonigal, he's out on bail, right?
Yes.
Basically a free man. And what kind of charges? What kind of time is he facing for these charges?
I'm thinking. I believe it's 20 years or over.
Yeah.
If he, I don't believe an espionage charge has come out yet, but it certainly could. If that happens, then he could face life in prison, or and that's a serious. I don't believe the espionage charge has come out yet. It may or may not happen. I really don't know.
And do you feel that you personally have any information that should cause any others to be indicted as well?
Yes, absolutely.
And have you shared that information?
Well, it's all in the documentation. I need to get, if there's a reporter out there, I'm working, talking to a couple of reporters right now, but I'm not sharing the documents. But if someone were to do an exclusive or something, I would certainly get them the documents, and they would see everything that's going on. I mean, there was a Democratic leader in the European Union that was targeted, and we're talking banks that were targeted as well. There's a number of illegal activities occurring here. This is such a widespread, complicated story. I'm only disclosing the tip of the iceberg for you guys, just not to hold back, but simply because it's just so complex. I couldn't even. It would take us 5 hours to get through the whole thing.
No, I hear you. But then, if there is a prosecutor involved, wouldn't you put together a report saying, "Listen, this is all the evidence I have, and I'm turning this over to you. You can come and question me, and this is what I have."
Yeah. I certainly can't comment on whether or not that has been done, or if any type of communication has taken place between myself and the USG. Matter.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, what else are you working on these days? You're a busy guy. You seem to like paint a target on yourself for all this stuff. Just run straight into the fire in every situation. Is this the limit of what you're working on, or do you have other things too?
Yeah. No. I mean, there's other things I'm working on, and you're right. I do jump in right into the fire, but I believe strongly in doing the right thing. And so sometimes you have to be able to face the consequences of doing the right thing, and that's what I'm facing now. Is the consequences of me coming out with these allegations. Also, I'm working on another book, and then I'm helping clients dealing with some trade secret theft, corporate espionage situations, and that's a big thing for me. Also helping other whistleblowers. Try to help get their stories out and get their stories investigated and understood, and just try to make a significant positive difference, which is hard sometimes because you don't always see your progress, right? So it's difficult. It's kind of like flying blind a little bit, but but that's why I appreciate someone like you inviting me on the show, because it allows the story to get out, and I truly believe public exposure is the best way for this, and I know in the upcoming weeks there will be a lot more coming out on this story, and regarding my document, just my documents, everything that's everything else that I have. But I've already posted some documents on Twitter. You can see it on my Twitter feed, and it's pretty disturbing what I've posted already. It just gives an indication of what's going on.
Yeah, you sent me some of that material too as well on Twitter, and you're saying that the new revelations are about the McGonigal case.
Yeah, well, it ties into three different cases, because the DOJ and the I believe the intelligence subcommittee is targeting Walter Serrano. They're targeting Mark Rossini's in jail, or he's out on bail, but he's been arrested. So this has to do with, and plus they're targeting Oleg Deripaska. So my allegations have to do with 4 different government investigations, not just McGonigal. But McGonigal is tied in with all of these investigations.
We're running out of time, but back to Flynn for a second. Is Flynn facing any kind of new investigation or new charges or anything? And what was he pardoned for? Do you remember?
I don't remember exactly what he was pardoned for. And I honestly don't know if he's facing any new charges. I do know the DOJ is taking my evidence extremely seriously. But again, I can't comment on any type of communication I've had with them or anything, whether I've had it or not had it. But it's definitely. I honestly believe eventually he will end up in jail. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is my prediction on the matter. I just don't see how. Let me put it this way: he's on the wrong. Flynn and Trump, these people are on the wrong side of history, and the people who are on the wrong side of history, it does not end up well for them.
Yeah, you would only hope, right? So, what is your next book going to be about?
So, my next book is going to be about doing the right thing and how to do the right thing and how to go up against different types of enemies and be able to defeat them, different types of Goliaths, and be able to fight and win. So it's kind of it's really a manual for kind of like a field manual for doing the right thing and blowing the whistle and going up against these giant corporations, like I did with HSBC Bank, where I was a whistleblower there and stopped billions of dollars in terrorist and drug cartel money back in 2010 to 2012. So I'm trying to just give people a guide. I think a lot of people are exposed to various things they want to whistleblow on or shed to the public or bring to the government light, but they're afraid to do it because they don't know how. So that's what the next book is about. So it's taken me some time to write it, but it should be great.
We've been talking to Everett Stern. You can find him on Twitter at Everett Stern #1, the numeral 1, Everett Stern 1. His website is everettstern.com. The first book, and we went into the book, the first story, in greater detail in the last interview with Everett Stern. You could find online on the podcast. And that book is called Dark Money and Private Spies, The Everett Stern Story. He's also got a book about the official Michael Flynn report to DOJ. He's got a Substack where you can read his writings. His company's called Tactical Rabbit. And it will also, too, in the last interview, we'll be going to this whole Charles McGonigal situation. But we just wanted to get back with him to get an update on these other names that he was holding back that he wanted to release during the press conference there. That you can, once again, you can find it on Everett Stern 1, the numeral 1. Everett, anything you want to leave us with, man?
No, I guess one thing I'll say is, again, do the right thing and be willing to suffer the consequences of doing it. That's what I'd like to leave everyone with.
I hear you, man. I tell you, we've got that same bug in us. To go out there and stick your neck out. It just seems so often it's unappreciated. And the stalking and harassment that goes on behind the scenes that people have no idea about seems to be, they just get away with it. There's really nothing to do about it. Just learn to adjust and live with it. But you're right. There does need to be a handbook on how to become a whistleblower or to take on these giants in a more effective manner than how it seems to be going about. I talk to so many whistleblowers and so many types like yourself. Everett Stern, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Good night.